Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Okay, Ralph, so thank you for joining me and shooting it raw. And listen, we haven't spoken in a very long time. So what country are you in again?
I'm in Florida, United States.
Whoa, Florida. Respect. What part, which city are you in?
So we are in Deerfield Beach right now, which is just north of Fort Lauderdale.
Basically, that's like the foreskin of the state.
The foreskin?
I mean, if Florida looks like a penis, it would be like where the foreskin is at.
Well, that's way at the top, isn't it?
No, I don't have one. I have no idea. The reason why I want you on Shooting It Raw is because I think the seed of photography, the sort of germinated when I met you as a punky little brat, and you were married to my cousin, and you're the one who brought me on a motorcycle the first time. You're the one who really I kind of observed doing photography. And listen, you've been doing photography for a very long time. So what was your first ever camera where you thought, okay, this is me doing photography?
My first ever camera was when I turned 18 and I made enough money to actually buy a real professional SLR. And that was back in 1976. That was the year of the Montreal Olympics. And I made a shitload of money there. And I decided to go and spend on one professional body and lens. That was it, 18 years old.
Do you remember what camera it was?
Yeah, I've been with Olympus from the beginning. So it's been a good, over 40 years.
Wow. Why Olympus more than anything else?
Well, back in the day of the SLR, it really didn't matter. All the formats were the same. They're all 35 millimeter film. So it didn't matter if you had a Nikon, Canon, Olympus, Pentax, whatever. They all used the same film and the formats were the same. It was a question of ergonomics, size, quality, lens selection, that kind of thing.
Right.
Back in the early 70s, Olympus came out with an incredible system called the OM system, and today it's revered as the most beautiful camera made by the Japanese, very close to Leica. So it had a lot of attributes, and I love the system, and I really got into the system. I had multiple bodies, I had lots of lenses, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the film days.
Right.
I switched over to digital in 2004.
Right. Okay. So when you got yourself a camera, now did you take lessons, or were you self-taught? Where did you begin to pick up a camera as a mode of self-expression?
No, I have to say that I didn't start with lessons. I picked up the camera. I was just intrigued by what it could capture. And I did take a couple of courses on the side during college. And I do remember taking, other than, basic photography, etc., I remember working in the darkroom. And you know what? I have to admit that I really did not enjoy it much. I loved being out shooting. I really didn't like going in and working with the chemicals.
Sure.
It wasn't my thing. And in those days, it was mostly black and white anyways.
And it was expensive.
It wasn't my thing. I like to be in front of the subject or the object or the thing of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what? I have to say that, when digital came out and the dark room became the light room, everything changed for me. Everything changed, I have to say. I love now working on the processing part of the photographs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm told I'm a little sick at it. I'm a little too much into it.
Okay. Well, look, so it's a hobby. Or it's more than a hobby. It's something that you're quite passionate about.
Extremely passionate. I have to say. I mean, I just see something, I need to capture it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I take it, I put it in the computer, and then I start to work on it, and it becomes like magic. I mean, the camera doesn't necessarily see what your eye sees. Many times you're quite disappointed in the output. I mean, you look at it and it looks flat, dull,
Yeah.
boring. Even the perspective is different, and you look at it and say, no, I don't remember it this way. So, like, is it me or is it the camera? Or,
Hmm.
uh, does the lens not see what my eyes see? So, the post processing part of it allows you to make it pop out, to make it look like what you remember it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to look like.
Got it.
And that's what makes it incredibly powerful. You honestly, without the post processing part, you can be a great photographer, but the results are not going to be there.
Sure, sure. Hey, so this is a perfect segue into the first image, and the one that I'd like to start talking about is the one where you have the four guys practicing. Okay, so the image, I have to describe it. So they're four men with their shirts off, sort of standing in a pose. Three of them are standing with a pose with their arms, with their like right arm up, their left arm pointing to the side. One guy, their legs are kind of crossed, but they're standing. They're clearly performing some kind of dance or some kind of maneuver together. They're on the street. This looks like Cuba, just as a guess. And so, why don't you tell me about that image? And first of all, when you made it, and then why that represents where you're at these days.
Well, what I've learned about myself is I love street photography. So, there are people that will shoot flowers, scenics, landscapes, things that possibly don't move. I love to shoot things that breathe or move. And I love shooting people. And if I can, I want to get some sort of emotion out of the photographs. So I'm looking for emotion. It could be in the movement, could be in the form, could be in the face, something there that makes it pop. Now, in this particular photograph, this was taken in Cuba, you're right. It's a very typical street scene. A lot of things happen on the street. You can stand on any street corner and life just goes right by you, and like it's just amazing what happens. So these guys, I learned later on, were actually four Italian fellows that came to Cuba to learn the cultural dance and take it back to Italy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I couldn't communicate at first. I was just shooting at first because this is right in the middle. It's right on a cross street.
Yeah, right in the
And
middle of
like
the street.
right in the middle of the street. I mean, it's irrelevant that cars may come by or anything. And they're playing loud music, okay, to accompany the movements. What I love in this picture, of course, is they pop from the surroundings. The surroundings are quite bleak. It's just people going about their lives. You can see by the old cars, of course, that gives it away that it could be Cuba because it's the only place in the world that has these vintage American cars in such large numbers. And these guys, their torsos are naked, and the color, if you even look at the color of the skin, just pops from the photograph.
For sure. Super tan, super like nice, sexy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's something that is it's almost common. You just have to capture it so that it feels like when I look at the photograph, I'm there again.
Right.
I'm there.
Right.
And the people that walk by just kind of stare at this. I mean, they took their time practicing. They must have been there over an hour, and I just stood there and watched. I love to listen to the music. I love to watch the movements, and then I was shooting as we go along. And you pick one that kind of like says, okay, this is the one that says something to me.
Was this your first time in Cuba?
No, I went when I was like, what was it, 1985, or I believe it was the first time. And this was the fourth time I went to Cuba.
Okay.
So I've spent a lot of time there. My girlfriend is Cuban, and she does live right around the corner, actually, from where this was taken. And I took the opportunity to spend a lot of time shooting a lot of Cuba, and it's just fascinating the way they live, the way they have to live.
Yeah.
We do lectures on Cuba, and we have put together photo slideshows for hundreds and hundreds of people to watch. And it's part of putting something together. It's part of putting a story together.
Here's what's interesting as well, is that these guys aren't Cuban, right? These guys, I mean, they could be Cuban. They look, but then again, now that you say Italian, I mean, like, sure, fine. They fit, they look Italian. So these guys are Italians who flew in to learn to dance,
Right.
who are practicing in the street. So if I can describe for people who are so I started describing. So the four of them are in the foreground. You can see their full bodies are in the image. The scene is shot, high noon pretty much. It's very bright, full on light.
It is. You look at the shadows.
Yeah.
The shadows are dead. I mean, they just drop.
Yeah. And then and
that's the hardest part. It's the hardest part. It's of the day to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get away getting those skin tones at high noon,
sure,
you've done pretty well.
No, for sure.
You can't ask them to come back, during the golden hour. Street photography happens when it happens, right?
Yeah. Well, wait, here's what's also interesting. Okay, so one of the first episodes I did was with Danny, who is your son. And
right.
It's interesting that you both mentioned the golden hour, right? Like it's like this reverential time of the day for photography, and it's funny how you both use that language. And here you are in Cuba, you send this image. In terms of the photographic gesture or action, or as a practice. How does this capture the essence of what's great about photography?
Okay, I think you have to look at the elements of a photograph. First and foremost is interest. Does it tell a story? Does it immediately take you to what you're trying to convey, or do you have to actually look for it?
Okay.
Now, the subject of my matter is actually the four guys that are dancing. You have to separate them from the background. Okay, so you try, yet you still want to show context of where they are, right?
For sure.
You want to take the focus out in the background, okay, so that they stand out, okay? Because to actually separate the subject from the photograph, so it pops, you can use either sharpness or color or contrast. Okay, there are several ways of doing it so that your subject pops out.
Sure.
Okay, the brown flesh colors are quite different than the rest. They're warm, and actually the rest of the photograph is quite cold.
Right. Yeah, but here's the thing. I agree with you, but on the other hand, I actually think the background or the setting or the environment tells a story that's as interesting. Like it's as much a part of...
I agree. What you're trying to say is that, and I can tell you, for me personally, and I do teach as much as I can photography to others, but backgrounds are critical to a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Well, critical. People have a tendency just to shoot what they see in front of them, never looking or allowing for the background to tell the story or to complete a story.
Sure.
Whether you have to blow out the background and get beautiful colors and beautiful bokeh so that the subject matter pops, or whether you use the background to localize what's going on or where they are, okay, to make the story as we speak. Background is critical, and that's what I always push on everyone. Background is as important as the foreground and the subject.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure we could talk about this some more. Let's hop to the next image, and then we'll just keep the momentum going. And the next image that I chose, And then, yeah, see how that dovetails is the one of the child. It's in black and white. The child sort of leaning against. Okay, so what you see is a girl. Her expression is kind of a little bit. I wouldn't say positive. Like she's not looking especially happy. She's more like in a state of wonder. Her face, her head is leaning against. It looks like bamboo, or it looks like I don't know, poles of some sort. Her hand is against one of the poles, and it's a very intimate, very close up portrait. So when did you make this photo, and where was this? Was this also in Cuba?
No, so this is actually in Israel.
Okay, in Israel.
And a little Orthodox girl that I found wandering around in the back alleys of a town called Mea Shearim, which is considered to be the most ultra-Orthodox community in Israel.
In the world, you could argue.
Well, yeah, you know what? You're right. I don't know. Maybe there's something in New York we don't know about, but in any case, that was one of my things when I went to Israel. I said, you know what? I really want to go there, and I just because you know, ultra Orthodox people and what I consider myself Jewish is we're like worlds apart.
Completely.
Okay? We really don't understand each other, right?
Totally other world.
Yeah, so what my goal here is I wanted to go and visit this community, and I was very lucky that my cousin, she came with me, and she loves photography, so we both headed out, and we run into this area. Now she has to be completely clothed to be acceptable as a woman in the community.
Yeah.
And for me, no, I'm just carrying cameras, so I get away with it. That's okay. She gets shunned on every corner.
Mm-hmm.
The men walk away. They'll turn the corner a block ahead of her. Even though she's trying, they just refuse to accept her, okay?
Sure.
And here you are, you're walking around and you're really trying to capture some sort of emotion, some sort of a capture that, you're not used to seeing. And here in this particular case, we walked into the back alleys, and it was the end of, it was a Jewish holiday. It was, can't remember offhand. We have the Sukkot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually part of a sukkah that she's leaning on. And in the back alleys, it's full of these, hand-built sukkahs, okay? And the kids are playing around in the back. And this little girl was all by herself. She wasn't playing with anyone, and she was very, very shy. It took me probably 20 minutes or more to actually approach her close enough to get her to be interested. She was actually very curious, but she was also very, very timid, this little girl. I took multiple captures of her as she was approaching me. And this is the shot. I mean, when you're talking about children, kids, it's everything is all the emotion is in their eyes.
Sure.
Okay, and this captures it. And you know what? I dabble much more today in black and white than I used to, but the capture works so much better in black and white than
for
in
sure.
color.
Okay, I can totally, I can see that.
And if you look at the photograph, if you use the rule of thirds, it follows perfectly in the rule of thirds.
Sure.
Even though it's a square photograph.
Right. So in a weird way, you describing making this image, to me, sounds a bit like when I try to go out and make a photograph of a barking deer.
A barking deer.
So as in Hong Kong, they have barking deers, and the deer are basically as small as a medium-sized dog. They're tiny, and they're extremely timid, very hard to photograph. In fact, I only have, 2 or 3 photographs in the 17 years that I've lived in Hong Kong. They're so timid. And so you describing making this photo of this girl, this little girl who's like looking at you as kind of alien, maybe threatening, kind of different, and then just trying to get close to get that sort of comfort and that moment. I don't know. That's the kind of, maybe I just made that connection because I've been trying
it's a good connection because actually photographing animals, evokes the same kind of emotion. I mean, I can tell you that people love photographs of any kinds of dogs and cats. They just fall over backwards for those kind of photographs because there's an emotional connection. And like a deer is so sweet. I mean, I've shot a few deer. I mean, it's great when you get them. It's just as difficult, if not more. I mean, you have to obviously go to where they are.
Well, like in your case, you went to the Mea Shearim, which means 100 gates in Jerusalem, and you went to their habitat, and you kind of went in there dressed in a weird kind of camouflage of the sort of the outsider in his camera gear, and you tiptoed gently.
It's so funny. It's so funny because I'm pretty forward. I just point long lenses at people. And it's like, do you have the balls to do that? I mean, I know I'm infringing in their customs in their community, but it's so intriguing. I really want to capture it. There's no other way. So you develop all these tricks to actually be able to capture them. You hide on the corner and then you just pop out as they're walking, right beside you. Point the long tube in their face and you capture it. It's like, I got so many great shots in that area. It's so satisfying. I mean, it's like, wow.
Perfect segue to the next image, which is actually of the three guys sitting, 1, 2, 3. These guys are Orthodox Jews. They've got the crazy side locks of hair. They're wearing their fedoras. They're dressed like the Polish aristocracy of the 19th century. The crazy suits and all that stuff. So what's this image about? Was this again in Israel or was this in Montreal?
So this is actually the same day. I had some great captures. What happened was, in my walking around, I have to say, I mean, I'm walking around with a sling and two cameras and my bag. So, I look like I'm shooting for a newspaper. And this gentleman walks up to me and asks me who I am, what am I doing here, what are these photographs for? He's very inquisitive, and I'm fine. I'm telling him, yeah, this is something I do. And he says, you know what? I want you to meet our rabbi. And I go, really? Okay, where's this? So they have a congregation in the community, and he says, please come and meet the rabbi, 15 minutes. But he turns around to my cousin and says, but you can't come.
Of course.
So
of course.
It's like really? Okay. So she says, no, go ahead. I'm going to wait for you outside. Take the opportunity. Huh. So I'm looking at this as like, wow, okay. To be invited.
Sure.
Actually witness what they do in their congregation, it's a pretty rare thing. So I said, listen, I'll come, but you have to allow me to shoot anything I want. And he says, come. Absolutely. I don't want to just go there to meet the rabbi.
Yeah.
I'm going there, I want to take photographs.
So you're negotiating with the guy. You're like, okay, listen, yeah, okay. Quid pro quo, man.
If I'm gonna follow you, you have to tell me that I can shoot. And it was the end of the holiday, and it was there was a huge crowd. The area is a very poor area. Okay, this is not like you think of New York synagogues, beautiful, huge, almost like churches.
Poverty in that part of Jerusalem is very high. Like these communities are quite poor, for sure.
And they are. It's very poor, and it's very I don't know, it's a dump, literally garbage everywhere. Okay, it reminded me a little bit about Cuba. Okay, because I've been there several times already. Okay, But they invite you in. So I said, okay, fine, great. So I walk in and my cousin's going to wait outside. Okay. So I go in and this place is really, it's packed. Okay. It's really packed. And it's one big room. And they separate the women, behind a large curtain. So you don't see them at all.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have the little girls that are allowed with the men, etc. And you have a lot of young men that are, reading from the Torah and all that stuff. Very, very interesting, okay? A lot of people around. And I shot for over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up staying much longer.
Your cousin's outside going, who's this guy?
Ron, I was standing on the tables taking pictures. Okay? I did anything I wanted.
Nice.
I shot the kids, I shot the prayers, I shot under the chuppah, I shot anything I wanted. And I told them that my gift would be that I would prepare an album and I would send you the photographs.
Oh, that's nice.
It's not, you know what? It's my greatest pleasure is when people ask if they can have the photographs, and I want them to have the photographs.
Right.
I mean, they'll get so much more pleasure than I even will.
I have to ask you a question. There's a quick interruption here. Have you, because your photographs look, you're the one who introduced me to photography. You're the first person I met who's very conscious about your photographic practice. You definitely spend a lot of time getting deep into it. Have you ever sold your images, like beyond using them on a personal level? Have you ever sold your images for either commercial work or for more, to collector or anything like that? Or so what's that side?
Well, of course, I have never sold as much as I would like to sell. The last one I sold is actually the little girl.
Oh, okay.
That little girl was in an exhibition, and it drew a lot of interest. People were asking and looking, and one particular woman could not get it out of her head.
Right.
Going back to it, and she couldn't get that image out of her head, and she had to have the photograph. And some of the medias I use, I actually did not print it on paper. I actually put it on brushed aluminum.
Oh, okay.
And it was a square, like a 20-inch by 20-inch.
Okay.
Brushed aluminum, black and white, which really looked very, very nice. I mean, it just popped. It was just beautiful. And she bought it. She had to buy it, so she bought it. I get jobs where I have to do a project, and then I have to give them a bunch of pictures. But when I'm traveling,
Sure.
I'm going to these places, I do it for me. And this is something that what an opportunity. Honestly, they invite you in,
Mm-hmm.
they make you feel at home, they allow you to shoot anything you want. And I ended up giving them, the best 60 shots. And then they started hounding me. Then they said, oh, you got to send us more. Please send us more. Please send us more. And we'll pay you as much as you want. And I said,
Wow.
and I responded, I said, it's not about the money. This is the project. I'm giving it to you. Even if I have
Mm-hmm.
more, I wouldn't sell it to you. I would just give it to you. You invited me into your home, so this is my gift to you. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
next time we'll do some more. Next time I'm in Israel, I'll let you know. We're connected at this point,
I have no idea what tangents we'd land on, and so we land on this one. So when you go out, in terms of your photographs, you're using them. You're very conscious of the fact that you're trying to create an image that you're going to share with others and are going to try to evoke an emotion. Right, all these things.
There's many photographs that I've taken. Like if you look at the gallery, there are many photographs of performers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere I go in the world, I like to look at street performers or on-stage performers. I've done orchestras and stuff like that. Most cases, I'm not even invited. I invite myself. Many times,
Sure, just do it.
Many times I just go right up on the stage and shoot. And they all think, well, he's the paid photographers doing this, that's okay. And I get away.
Just with a bit of confidence, you just get away with it. It's like, okay.
Photography, you got to have that confidence. If you're going to do street photography, you got to have confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be right in their face sometimes. But when it's a performance, it's acceptable. I mean, they almost accept it. If you're going to perform, you have to be happy about getting photographed, right?
Of course.
Of course. So I do so many of these things, and then I will walk up to them and say, "Here's my card. If you want the pictures, just email me, and I will give them to you."
Uh-huh.
And I've done that so many times. I've done it so many times. There's a lot of people a lot of these performers have used my photographs in their web sites and all stuff because they've never had photographs that were that good,
Right. How do you feel about, you're shooting at Olympus still, I'm assuming. So I know actually. So how do you feel about the fact that right now, people have smartphones with a Leica camera built into it, and they're taking amazing shots. Like, how is your feeling about image making in terms of like the overproduction of photographs?
There are billions and billions of shots taken every week, every month, every year. It's actually, I think this helps the photography industry, whereas you start with something that's already in your pocket that you probably didn't even care, you didn't pay for, you actually wanted a phone. Comes with a free camera, which is like amazing, and you have the ability to take some, respectful shots. I'm of the notion that these cell phones don't approach any of the equipment that we use in the field, like real DSLRs or mirrorless cameras with good sharp lenses that bring the action to you. I mean, a good zoom, you can have a 200-300 millimeter zoom. That doesn't exist on a cell phone yet. But it's also a matter of being able to control the light, because a photograph is nothing but light. And if you know how to control it, you get these amazing photographs that pop.
Mm-hmm.
With a cell phone, you can't really control depth of fields. It's hard to control your f-stops, okay? It's hard to control your exposure in terms of compensation, plus or minus. You can't zoom in and out as you will. You're looking at a screen instead of through a dedicated viewfinder that has all kinds of information that you can see and adjust on the fly before taking the photograph. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have a cell phone, obviously, and I can't take a decent picture with it. Like, mm-hmm. I suck using the phone on my cell phone. It's like, it's not the phone, the camera on the cell phone. I suck at it. I can't do anything with it.
But that's more like a snapshot photography, right? That's kind of like, oh, I was there, I happened to be there, ooh, lucky, and then you get what you get, for sure. And clearly the kind of
it's way better than nothing. I mean, I have to agree.
Sure.
I mean, the fact that you and I, we don't carry our professional cameras. When we go shopping, if something happens, we don't have it.
Sure. So just to share with the world, what is the gear that you absolutely, and here's what's kind of funny, because I have this relationship to gear, and I think a lot of guys maybe, and women like too, but a lot of people have this as well. I have a quasi animistic connection to my gear. Like I don't feel an emotional tie to all my stuff, but some of my things, like my bicycle,
yeah,
my camera, that I have this kind of like it's an emotional animistic connection to it that I kind of like fetishize and love the object, right, in a way. So what is your gear that you just really, like you get a great lens?
I think first of all, I think guys have this attraction to it. It's almost, if you go back to the Ford versus Chevy wars, if you're a Ford guy, you're a Ford guy forever, and vice versa, right? And if you're a Nikon guy, you're Nikon forever. You're never going to switch to Canon, that kind of thing, right? And it's not the reason why I stuck with Olympus. I mean, I went from SLR for years and then nothing in between. you have a family, the kids grow up, you're busy, you're working, this and that. There's a lot less photography going on. And then as you approach retirement, and the kids are older, the gear comes out, and then you start upgrading, and then you're back into it. And when you retire, of course, you got lots of time, okay, to shoot and to do post. And that's what happens. Now, in my case, okay, mirrorless came out. Mirrorless came out in the early 2000s. I actually got on board only in 2012, okay, and that changed everything for me. And I know that you shoot mirrorless as well. So you know what I'm
Okay, you outed me. Yes, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, okay? The ability to actually look in the camera, make changes that you actually can perceive as better or worse. So you can do all that before you actually take the picture. Okay, there's no crimping here. You're not shooting, and then looking down, reviewing to see if they actually came out.
Right.
Okay, in the film day, we didn't have either of those, right? We shot a roll of film and waited a week, and then, oh well, nothing came out. Oh well, just blew my opportunity. It's never going to happen again, right? Right. But in this case, it's kind of really cool that if you're in any mirrorless system, that you can actually control and see before you actually trigger, hit the button.
So when you were making the photograph, for example, the 4 guys in Cuba, does it have you're shooting many photos, but do you have a moment where you think, oh, that was a great, that one worked, or do you normally have 100 that you're picking from?
I never shoot continuous. Okay, I'm a one single shot person. Maybe that's from film days. It's too expensive. I had a motor drive on my SLRs back in the day, but I hated to use it because your film would be over in 3 seconds. So in this case, I shoot single. It's all about timing. I've always said, to me anyways, photography is about timing. Okay, it's all about timing. If you look at this last picture we're looking at, this guy gave me this look for a split second.
Sure.
Okay.
No, they work. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Right, and it's the middle guy, and if you look, the focus is on the middle guy. Okay. That's where my focus hit, and he just comes across like this is a comedy. These guys are really serious, and this is a comedy. It reminds me of the Three Stooges.
Sure. Well, it's also good because the one who's behind so the one in the foreground, he's just kind of neutrally looking forward, he's just yeah, whatever. The guy in the middle,
he's out of focus.
Yeah, and the guy in the middle who's looking at you is giving you a really broad, honest, unfiltered sort of expression. His arms are kind of clasped against his chest, but he's still kind of letting himself kind of connect with you with his expression.
That's right, because it was such a momentary thing. It just happened in a split second. It's not like he jumped up, raised his arms, and gave me the face. It was strictly the face, right? And I mean, it's so unexpected,
And the guy in the back, who's kind of looking at you, he's more just kind of watching you going, kind of smirking, kind of looking at you going yeah, okay. And these guys, here's the thing, okay, where were you born?
I was born in Israel.
You're born in Israel. Where, so you're born, I was born in Israel, you're born in Israel. We grew up in Montreal, right? Even though, culturally, when I look at these Orthodox guys, I mean, yeah, if I could maybe come to understand them if I tried, but totally different. What kind of world are these guys living in? And look, I mean, you can judge or not, but these guys could be on a set. These guys, I mean, these are not the kind of people that,
No, they stand out. Ran, they stand out like a sore thumb. And the difference is we don't. We're secular. We don't stand out at all. Right? We blend in. And they purposely stand out. Okay, and they're not afraid of it. Okay, they want their
Sure.
privacy. That's true. Okay, they do their own lives. They don't actually ever convince you to follow them because that's not
Hmm.
the way it works, right? This is something that you're born with, really.
Or you choose to follow with a
Well,
lot of hard
you
work.
you you don't. I mean, your parents choose for you until it comes to the time where you might choose for yourself.
Sure.
Okay, because there are people that run away from it. It happens. So this is something they live with forever.
Hmm.
And I don't question it. I just like to photograph it. I like to be,
Sure.
and just let people look at it. They can judge all they want. But these people were extremely, extremely nice with me. I mean,
Right, right.
I ended up there for almost an hour and a half. It was supposed to be a 15-minute thing, and the shooting was so good, and they were so open that, hey, here's the party. I'm going to stay at the party till it ends.
Here's what's kind of funny. Like, so, I've traveled around a bit. One time we were in Bali and we're invited just off the cuff to somebody's wedding, right? It was just a sort of the jungle forest bamboo wedding, and same sort of thing. We were just invited, and we're clearly outside looking in and witnessing this weird sort of cultural moment, and it's unpredictable. It just kind of happened like by chance. And yeah, you're just kind of standing watching, going like, okay, these are like fellow human beings living their lives, and in a way, I mean, not in a way, in a I would make this connection that just as I am outside of the cultural experience, say, of the people, the families that we saw in Bali with their sort of traditional wedding. Even though I was born in Israel as well, and grew up in a very Jewish household, when I see these guys or this community, I don't, I am way outside
You don't
of
associate with it.
yeah,
But like you in Bali, when they invite you to something that's quite sacred, like a wedding, I mean, that is, I mean, what greater honor is there? To invite a perfect stranger, okay, into a very intimate event,
sure,
right? I mean, it just says something about the people, right?
mm-hmm.
This happened to me when I was in Africa. I walked into people that were at a wedding. They were shooting in a wedding, and I walked in. I started shooting their wedding, right? No, it was quite incredible because I didn't understand the culture, and I could barely communicate. But you know what? I stayed. I took a few pictures. I took their coordinates, and I sent them photographs. But before all that ended, they actually invited me to the wedding.
That's awesome.
And you know what? What an honor! Like, wow! Like,
I think that actually happens a lot.
because you make a connection.
Yeah.
There's a connection. Here's the thing. You look at that gentleman. Any photograph I take of people, I want eye contact. When you get that eye contact, okay, when you get it, you develop a trust, a communication, right? That's hard to disengage from. I mean,
Isn't that interesting though? Isn't that really interesting?
it's critical. It's any person when you're walking down the street, if you get that eye contact, right? You got eye contact.
Sure.
Right? It's like it happens for like a split second, but you had it where your eyeball is actually connected with lasers or something, right?
Look, let's just separate. Let's just sort of look at that as a kind of artificial experience. Like artificial meaning let's remove what we think. Like let's just imagine. Okay, what's actually happening? These two animals, for whatever reason, their gaze connects, and there's this energy that gets communicated. That there's, it's fascinating. When you think about it, like the fact that here's this dude who's got like, maybe he was born in this community and he's looking at you like you're like some sinner from the outdoors. And yet as these two beings, you're looking at each other and you make that connection. That it's really peculiar. And but in fact, he's actually looking at your lens, so he knows he's being watched. So he's performing.
You know, it's interesting because it's actually a scary thing. Most people don't want to gaze into each other's eyes. There's a fear in that. I mean, okay, you see a pretty girl on the street. Are you going to stare? Are you going to look right into her eyes? With great difficulty, I would think. But this doesn't happen just with humans. I mean, you can have that connection between a human and an animal.
For sure.
While in Africa, I remember being at an 8-foot distance to a lion, and we locked gaze, in each other's eyes. And I remember at that point, all that mattered was to get the shot. I didn't care about anything else. I had lunged out of the Jeep to get the shot. I was lying in the driver's laps because I was on the wrong side of the Jeep to get the shot. And my half my torso is out the window, and I'm on top of the driver to get the shot 8 feet away. And it never occurred to me. We got that eye contact. I knew that he was just staring right at me. But it never occurred to me that there was any danger involved.
But wait a second, you had a camera in front of your face. So he wasn't looking at your...
I don't know about you, but when I look through my camera, it's as if I'm looking through my eyes. I don't see... I mean, I see the eyeballs. You're right. They don't see my eyeball, but I know they're staring right at me. All these shots that you get of strangers, children in third world countries, where they're looking straight at the lens, okay? My camera's not at my face all the time. They've seen me.
Sure.
If they allow me a first shot, I'll go overboard. I go overboard. To the point where it doesn't become street photography, it becomes a portrait session.
Sure, absolutely.
And I start moving them around and telling them, do this, do that. If I could go that far, we have a connection. We've already developed a connection. And I'll show them the photographs as we're going along, okay? And they get a big kick out of it.
Yeah.
And if we can communicate, I then send photographs.
Sure.
I've done that with a lot of Arab Muslims in Israel. I couldn't believe the connections we made. And I think the camera, once you get close, the camera brings you closer.
Yeah. Well, it's a bridging...
It's almost like breaking the ice. I shot, these women, veiled women, Muslim women, with no problem. And normally they don't allow that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to add the link to your gallery of images, and whenever they have these online sort of contests or whatever where people vote in photographs, you consistently get like to the top. Like your images very consistently get picked and selected and chosen, and people gravitate towards them because you have like. Do you think that's?
I like to think that there's some relevance to them.
Okay.
Because it's got to say something. It's got to mean something. It's got to be something you can look at and ponder over and think about, and not just skip it like it was a snapshot.
So do you feel that an important part of a photograph's creation is its display and and printing? For example, like you print books, and I've seen a lot of your prints. So do you feel that, like, what's the difference between having it on a screen versus having it on a page?
Unfortunately, it's gotten so expensive to print photographs and to frame photographs, but I love to do it when I get the chance because it actually pops so nice. On the screen, it's great. And I have to say that I've had the opportunity several times already to actually show our photographs. My partner and I, we did these Cuba things, where we show our photographs, imagine, on a cinema-sized screen.
Oh, wow.
And, I mean, that's the ultimate because, other than that, we're talking like banners or like, I
Sure.
mean,
But when it's
I mean,
monumental, like on a screen.
it's huge. It's like, this is in a theater and it's a cinema size screen. So I look at photographs on my cell phone and I look at them on my 32-inch screen at home. And then, I've had the opportunity to see them in like, these 50 or whatever, 75-foot screens. And you know what? It still comes down to making photographs, and not necessarily on paper. I've done this on metal and I've done this on acrylic. Okay, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's just beautiful, and every photographer loves to exhibit, and I've taken every opportunity I can to exhibit. So you actually physically have to bring your photographs, usually no bigger than 20 by 16 or 20 or 16 by 24, that kind of thing. I mean, it can't be monstrous things. And there's no better feeling that people walk up to them, look at them, and comment.
Sure.
Photography is an art form.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if we get credit for it. I don't know if we get credit, honestly. There are painters, oil painters, that get all the credit for artistic, and then the photographer comes along and they think that we just pointed the camera, pushed the button, and the job was done.
So yeah, it's not taken as, for example, as seriously. Well, if photographs, prints, that kind of stuff isn't as permanent as an oil painting. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's more, somebody who puts in 100 hours to make one painting, literally 100 hours of brushing and,
But Ran, I have friends, photographer friends of mine that are amazing, and they excel at specifics, like, let's say landscape or something. And they will take 100 hours to produce that photograph. They sit in front of their computers for 100 hours until they get it right.
Right. Got it.
I don't spend 100 hours. I mean, listen, we have to agree that you got to start in photography. You have to have a photograph with a good foundation, okay?
Sure.
All the right elements to make it good. And you take that and you can make it great. Okay? So you can't take a piece of crap and expect it to be great just because you're great at editing.
Well, look, part of me doing this podcast is talking to different people and different, everybody's got a different approach, a different view, a different feeling, a different relationship to the images that they make.
In the end, all that counts is the results, right? All that counts is the results.
So yeah, we can of course talk about that forever. So right now you're in Florida. Are you in the lockdown? Are you able to make photographs, or are you at the moment, just like many people, basically at home, kind of going, okay, what, waiting for the shoe to drop?
This is a moment for me now to just do the post. So I have a ton of material that I've shot, and now I have every reason to sit in front of the computer for hours and hours and work on post and actually create some pretty great images. So this is an opportunity for that. I mean, before this madness came down, yes, I was shooting a lot. Florida is a great place to shoot if you have to stay in one place. One thing is being a photographer with the actual camera, and then the other side of it is so important is the post.
Yeah.
People think they can out of camera. Everybody talks about out of camera, and this is natural. And why would you change it? Well, because the camera doesn't see or record what our eyes see or feel. We have to put that in. We have to work it in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I show you a pre and post of the same picture, you go, whoa.
No, there's a big difference. No, I understand that. I totally understand. Well, I know it because I understand and do it myself. You're the one who really put the sort of the awareness and my attention, because to a certain extent I really wanted to emulate you, because as a kid, like some like punky kid, you show up on your motorcycle and
So how old were you when we met? It's going to be like around 1980.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. That was about 8 or 9. And then you popped me onto the back of your motorcycle for a ride, which was super nice of you. Just this week, just last week, I brought Cadence, who's 8 years old, on the back of the motorcycle. And I put I got her to feel like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Cadence, I listened to the first podcast you did.
Yeah.
And that's got to be my favorite. It's like, with her, oh my God, this is a smart kid.
That's what was interesting, is that one, she can really express herself, which was why I wanted her on, because it's just like, it's interesting to get into the brain of an 8-year-old and say, well, what's your relationship to making photographs?
For those of you out there that haven't listened to Ran's first podcast, you got to go listen to it, because it's really inspiring. And you don't even, like, if you don't know that she's 8 years old, I mean, at the end of this, you go, what? She's 8 years old? You got to be kidding me. You know?
Yeah. No, for sure.
It was great. That was great.
Thank you so much for joining me, Ralph Chemtov, for this episode of Shooting It Raw. I really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about the show in general or today's guest in particular, be sure to check out the episode notes at www.shootingraw.com. That's shooting-it-raw.com. I appreciate everyone who takes some time out of their day to give Shooting It Raw a listen. So get out there, make amazing photos, and be sure to appreciate how amazing the world is. Gratitude and a sense of humor